television. It's killed conversation.
It's killing the cinema.
Shirley, what about your homework?
If you ask me, there's a whole generation growing up with square eyes. No wonder they're all illiterate.
If you want to do that, you'll have to go to the pictures. I'm watching Crossroads.
It's no use settling down, woman. 5 minutes in the match of the day. And you know I always watch it.
If you ask me, that's what's behind all that football hooliganism. They see it on the telly and they think it's clever.
If you ask me...
If you ask me, for a medium accused of training people just to sit like dummies, television has a remarkable ability to get people worked up about its powers. But it does have powers. There's no doubt about that. My name's Peter Fiddick, and I actually earn my living writing about television for a newspaper, The Guardian, which I suppose is another example of how important some people think television is. 20 years ago, newspapers paid little attention to television, apart maybe from revelling in its disasters. They don't leave it at that anymore, because if there's one thing they know their readers have in common, it's watching telly. Whether you have 1 million odd readers like we do on The Guardian, or 5 million like the Mail, or even 10 million plus like the Mirror or the Sun, you aren't in the same league as the Sweeney or Bruce Forsyth or the two Ronnies who would get disappointed if less than 17, 18, 20 million of us watched them week after week. As the final whistle blows at the Cup final every year, the dials in the waterworks of Britain suddenly leap as more than half the households in the country fill their kettles and flush their lavatories together. To put it at its lowest, anything that can make that many of us even go to the lavatory at the same time deserves a second thought. But I think that television, its power and its possibilities, are a lot more interesting than that. And what we're going to do in these programmes is have a look at those things to try and see how we use television, how television uses us, and how we could change it if we wanted to. Because the telly isn't just a hole in the wall with programmes pumping through it like water from a tap or mains electricity. If that's the way it seems, with its endless stream of programmes from lunchtime to midnight, it's because that's the way the BBC and ITV organise it, by permission. It could be changed. If that's also the way we watch it, sliding from the news to Crossroads to This Is Your Life, simply because they keep on coming and the chair's comfortable, that's our decision. I'm not saying it's the wrong decision. I do it myself, even when I'm not being paid. But it's worth seeing for a start what all that viewing adds up to. Last winter, the average Briton will have spent about 20 hours a week watching television. That's far more than for any other single activity except work. Actually, the chances are that you've just finished a spell helping to boost the figures, because the age group that does more viewing than any other isn't the middle-aged, slumping in the chair all night after a hard day's work. It's the kids, the under-15s. Even 3 years ago, where most of us were managing 15 hours or so a week, the under-15s were already well over the 20-hour mark. And within that group, the 12 to 14-year-olds are the square-eyed champions. Now, that shouldn't be too much of a surprise. At that age, you're not going to bed so early, but perhaps there aren't so many other things to do outside the home as there'll be a bit later. So you stay in and watch $6 Million Man, Top of the Pops, and as much else as your parents will let you. But because the children's programmes are still pretty interesting, you watch them too, from Blue Peter to Scooby-Doo. You might feel that you've got a bit beyond that. From about 15 onwards, there's less viewing done and more other things, youth clubs, football, dancing, boyfriends, even homework. Even so, the telly's always there waiting. And unless yours is going to be the generation that makes history, in 5 years' time or so, most of you will be back in front of the box quite a lot of the time, along with the rest of us. So it seems worth knowing a bit about this unique form of communication, if only to make sure that, however much we watch it, we're in control of it, rather than having it dominate us. After all, they do have ways of making us view. Oh, really? That's the sign that says it's time to check up on the tricks of the television trade. It'll come up somewhere in every programme. Well, if you don't think there are tricks for making you stay tuned, then just stay tuned. Here's the simplest, as seen on ITV at 16 minutes to 6 one evening last winter.
Now, a look ahead to tonight's entertainment on YTV with, at 7:30, Coronation Street, and a visit to the maternity hospital for Ray Langton.
Mr. Langton, if we thought that there was any cause at all for alarm, do you think we'd be going on like this?
How the heck do I know how you'd be going on? I've not been a father before.
No, well, I suppose it is only natural you should feel a bit of concern, but don't let your wife see it. There's no point in worrying her as well, is there?
At 8 o'clock, there's comedy in Cuckoo Waltz.
Hey, I still got some gruel left from yesterday. Shall I heat it up?
Oh, and it's my week for the bone.
And at 9 o'clock, Charlie's Angels run into the law. Charlie's Angels at 9 o'clock. And at 10:30, Brian Glover says it's no joke living in Barnsley.
You can always tell when you're back in Barnsley the beer's good. And it's the first time I've been back since they showed my film, It's No Joke Living in Barnsley. A lot of people didn't like it. As a matter of fact, it's a good job I used to do a bit of wrestling. But a lot of people did. Make up your own mind, because Yorkshire Television is showing it again. Cheers.
It's no joke living in Barnsley at 10:30, Charlie's Angels at 9, comedy in Cuckoo Waltz at 8, and at 7:30, Coronation Street. Just some of tonight's viewing highlights on YTV.
Wonder what happened to World in Action in the News on that last list. Still, it's very useful to know what programmes are coming up later, get some idea whether they might be interesting. You can then choose what you want, switch off, and come back later. But that's not quite what they're after, is it? Here's the one that gives the game away.
There now follows a party political broadcast on behalf of the Labour Party. This programme is also being broadcast by the BBC.
Meanwhile, over on the other side...
There now follows a party political broadcast on behalf of the Labour Party. This programme is also being broadcast by ITV.
And we know what that's saying, don't we? Whatever the party is.
It's just possible that you won't be interested in watching the next 10 minutes, but you won't get anything different from the other lot, so why not just stay with us until it's all over?
In other words, whatever you do, don't press the button, because whether it's ITV or BBC, what they'd really like is to keep as many of us as possible with them from one end of the evening to the other. The reason's quite simple, no secret. The money to make the programmes for ITV comes from selling the advertisers the time to show their commercials. The more people watching, the more the advertiser's willing to pay. So the pressure is on to keep as many of us as possible watching for as long as possible. It doesn't work like that for the BBC. They get their money from the television licenses we have to buy when we get a set. But they've come to feel that if we seem to like ITV's programmes better than theirs, we might start resisting when they need to ask for a bigger licence fee. So their aim is, over the weeks, to get us watching BBC programmes as often as ITV's. Besides, they both say, if our people are making good programmes, why shouldn't we try to get viewers in front of them? So when you watch those all-action trailers or leaf through radio or TV Times, it's not just some random collection of their latest efforts you're seeing, but a carefully constructed sequence designed to get you watching early and keep you there. They've learned a few tricks over the years. You'll notice that those habit-forming serials come early on, like Coronation Street, Crossroads, The Brothers. Then come the comedies and those popular American action series, Gemini Man, Bionic Woman, Columbo, McCloud. You'll scarcely find a documentary before 9 o'clock and few before 10. Of course, not all programmes are equally popular, and the people who make them don't expect them to be. But they have a trick or two to cope with that, too. One is called the inheritance factor. That means that if you do have a less popular programme, you put a very popular one before it in the hope that most people will just carry on sitting through the next one. Even better is the trick called hammocking, because in that you don't just put a popular programme before the one you're worried about, you put another popular one after it, and really make sure we stick around. And if you think that's all too simple to work, then it's time to meet...
The top 20!
That was the top 20 as the ITV research unit found it in a peak viewing week in October 1976. So, what does it show us? The 21 top programmes include all 4 episodes of Crossroads and A Coronation Street. There's one habit at work. But look at the other pattern. Of the BBC's 10, 4 are in a row on Saturday. Another 4 are in a row on Friday, with a big audience even for the news. And for the other side, 5 of ITV's top programmes are on Monday night. That's pretty clear evidence of the way we tend to let the television people choose for us. Would all those people have watched World in Action's report on unemployment if it hadn't had George and Mildred before it and the Sweeney after? So don't doubt that watching the box is a popular habit. And can you really doubt that all that viewing has some effect on the rest of our lives? Try making your own list of the ways it works. I've only got time to give you some idea of the range. We've already mentioned football. The reason you don't see televised soccer on a Saturday afternoon is that British clubs are afraid no one will go to the actual matches. Even in Italy, where they do show live games, a midweek international between Italy and England wasn't televised in case no one went to work. But it can work the other way. In 1966, when the World Cup was held in England and we won, huge television audiences got so excited that next season's soccer had a boom in crowds. Some sports might well not exist now without big sponsors. But what the sponsors are interested in is getting on television, because that will help them sell their motor oil, sports equipment, cigarettes. But that's another story, television's selling power. And that doesn't mean just the things that are advertised on ITV. Look at this lot. These 2 lads sell posters even faster than they drive cars. That one sold 120,000 at 35p a time. But then there's this one. And this one. And this one. Would you believe £250,000 at 40p? That's a cool £100,000 you've shelled out, Starsky fans. Not to mention this, and Starsky and Hutch pin-up magazine at 45p, and 3 books. 500,000 of those at 60p odd each. That's another 325,000 out of somebody's pockets. These are just some of the books linked with television programmes. Some of them use the same characters, like Softly, Softly or When the Boat Comes In, but tell quite different stories. And then there are the ones written maybe years ago, their authors perhaps dead, that sell more now than ever before because they've been dramatised on TV and the books have pictures of the production. And some of them, like Raffles, Little Lord Fauntleroy, aren't the original author's stories, but new editions changed to be nearer the television version. When Melvyn Bragg started a programme reviewing the latest paperbacks, he soon found booksellers phoning to find out what would be mentioned so they could cope with the demand next day. And it's not just books. Here are the records of theme music, the stars, the games, the Womble soap, the cornflakes packets, radio, newspapers, even Hollywood at the height of its ambition never achieved this sort of reach into our lives. Television seems able to do it almost without trying, and it does try. But there are also more serious matters. On the Move, faced with the problems of several million adults who can't read or write properly, encouraged 90,000 in 1 year to overcome their embarrassment and sign up with local teaching schemes.
Reports action. Reports action. Reports action. On ITV, Reports Action called for volunteers for the fostering and adoption of children and received 1,600 replies. And television can do other things. When the Americans were electing a president in 1960, the 2 candidates, John Kennedy and Richard Nixon,
appeared in a television debate together. Most people have now forgotten what they said. But what everyone remembers is that the cameras showed Nixon looking in need of a shave, sweating under the lights, while Kennedy was calm, smooth, charming. Kennedy won, and the debates never took place again until 1976, and then under rules aimed at stopping that sort of comparison. But then President Ford met his challenger Jimmy Carter, and not all the rules nor the millions of dollars they both spent buying advice could prevent one of them making the big political blunder. Gerald Ford got there first.
I don't believe that the Romanians consider themselves dominated by the Soviet Union. I don't believe that the Poles consider themselves dominated by the Soviet Union. Each of those countries...
And that was enough. More than 100 million Americans were watching this debate, among them many thousands whose family roots were in Eastern European countries and who weren't likely to agree that the Russians were not in control. And they all had votes. It was an opportunity too good for Jimmy Carter to miss, and in a few brisk words he exposed Ford's mistake. Next morning, every newspaper and broadcasting station would be reporting the exchange, and Carter was a good step nearer the White House.
The Eastern European countries and the Soviet Union, and I would like to see Mr. Ford convince the Polish Americans and the Czech Americans and the Hungarian Americans in this country that those countries don't live under the domination and supervision of the Soviet Union behind the Iron Curtain.
But more important than that was the role of television in helping end the Vietnam War. It's generally agreed that it was the constant stream of television news in America, actually showing not just the killing but the effects of it on American families, that made public opinion demand an end to the carnage, sparking off protests like this one in Washington and helping push politicians into ending the war. But can you count on that? British television's been faced with the same question over the terrorism in Northern Ireland. Do they show the effects, the fires, the dead bodies, the injured, so that the public can see it's not a game? Or will all those images in the end lose their power to shock? Will real death of real people become boring? While all those gunslinging American cops provide the big excitement of the night. Violence, in fact and fiction, is one of the things television brings most often into our homes, and we'll return to it. But it's only one of the areas in which the immediacy and appeal of the television makes it a force in our lives. But we're the ones who give it that force because we watch it. And that's why I hope you'll join me again to look at what it is we're looking at.
Ground, overground, wumbling free. The wumbles of Wimbledon, common are we. Making good use of the things that we find, things that the everyday folks leave behind.